Welcome to the Culture Edit, content for work and more. It's a weekly roundup where we talk about the latest news in people strategy, company culture, and what's happening in the world today. Welcome to episode 12 of the Culture Edit. It is Monday, Labor Day. We decided to record today for a couple of reasons. One, because Chad decided to take a dirt nap on a Century on Saturday and was slightly incapacitated yesterday. And the other is because we felt like putting the episode out on Tuesday might be better since everyone will be back from vacation.
Dirt nap.
Yep, a nap in the dirt.
Coming to you live from the infirmary.
Everyone is injured here except me.
Yeah. I guess let's go ahead and get that out of the way.
Rip the don't laugh.
So this has been the hard part.
We woke up Saturday.
Nikki said she didn't want to ride because she had a bad feeling. I'll go ahead and say that right now. Which is the same thing you did for the Tucker that you didn't go to.
There's been a lot of instances where bad things happen, and I say I have a bad feeling, and then they happen.
Chisel said he's just going to call you before every ride now to find out what you're...
I have a sixth sense for these things.
Yeah. The reason you hear me saying ow repeatedly is because I have broken ribs, and which is a real problem being around Nikki because she makes me laugh every 10 seconds. So I keep telling her not to be funny, but...
I think it's just the way I look. I look funny.
So did the Mac One Love Century, which I think is awesome. Probably my favorite century of all. Mac does a great job. Metro Atlanta Cycling Club, great job with that event. They have over 2,000 people. It's the largest black cycling event in the country. That's what they told me on my SAG ride back to the car after crashing. I was in the front group, 70 miles in. Broke one of my cardinal rules by being in the middle of the pack. I'm either on the front or off the back. And I kind of blame Goose because I was talking to Goose. So it is Goose's fault. He's going to hear that for the first time. Now that I've had a few days to reflect. Guys went down in front of me. I went over the handlebars at probably 24, 25 miles an hour. Looks like I've broken my collarbone.
Possibly elbow.
My elbow and ribs, and it's not good. But the bike is fine.
The bike's fine.
Surprisingly, I didn't tell you this. I walked downstairs for the first time today.
He can't walk when I'm here, but then when I leave for a couple hours, he's miraculously walked around the kitchen, walked downstairs, checked on the bike.
Yeah, checked the
done
bike
all these
for the
things.
first time.
But then when I'm here, it's like, I can't move.
Well, I am much better today. I was able to get out of bed by myself
Yeah.
today. For the first time. So
it's only uphill from here.
Yeah, no, it will. So tomorrow we'll find out if any surgery is needed. Thanks to Dr. Alan McDonald, Peachtree Orthopedics. Also thanks to Brock. So Brock, Allen, and Goose literally scraped me off the pavement and then waited around for someone to come pick me up, which is a sign of true friends.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was I got the call, which every spouse or partner knows in the middle when your partner's supposed to be in the middle of a ride and you get the call from said partner, you know it's not going to be good. So someone is injured, someone has crashed. So I knew in that moment, I was like,
Were you half expecting it to be Alan's voice whenever you saw my phone calling you?
I kind of thought it was going to be like Goose or Brock crash and you're going to be like, can you pick them up or something?
Yeah.
So then when you said it was you, I was like, are you kidding me?
So listeners will probably be like, God, this guy crashes all the time. Because I crashed at Steamboat too. We just talked about that. But I've actually, this is the first time I've crashed on the road in 10 years.
But you've crashed pretty much at every gravel event you've ever been to.
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't crash on gravel, but I have not crashed on the road since 2013. And I've ride 10,000 miles a year always with other people. So it was a good run.
It's a good run until it wasn't.
Got started over again.
It started somewhere.
But the one thing I think is good perspective, and I think what a lot of people are like disturbed by how casual we've been around about all the broken bones, is that it's been worse for me, and so that perspective helps a lot whenever you've snapped your femur in half. The snap heard around the world in 2007.
I also think when you're a cyclist, people crash so frequently. Sorry, all people that are probably too scared to ride bikes now. It's It's more when you're riding in big groups at a fast pace. Why are you laughing? I'm not even saying anything
Because
funny.
I was just thinking about Jeff Warnicki saying how
He said,
our
"Don't talk
podcast
about
is
this."
going to dissuade new cyclists
No, I mean, I
forever.
think people should ride bikes for sure, but it is, to ride with big groups, it is taking a much higher risk. So, you just need to be aware of that. But,
So you're going to run and ride the trainer until I can move again.
well, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
feel like I can ride outside or ride on the road because if I get hit by a car or if I get in a crash and we're both incapacitated, I'm not exactly sure who is going to operate the household
Yeah.
or our business.
Yeah. I was going to say Michael can move in to operate the household, but the business
The
would be a
business
challenge.
part, yeah, that might be.
So speaking of that, we have a guest this week. Are you
Yeah.
ready to talk about the guest?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a cyclist, and he's crashed a lot too. He's
Yeah.
actually more of a runner now, and that we'll talk about
He's
that.
more of a runner probably because of all the crashes
Yeah.
in time.
So Jeff Richards, a longtime friend of mine, is the co-founder and chief operating officer of SnapNurse. SnapNurse, I think he founded in 2017. In 2022, they were named Inc. Magazine's second fastest growing company of the year, the fastest growing healthcare company of the year. Atlanta Journal, I believe, or Atlanta Business Chronicle named them the fastest growing Atlanta company
Maybe we should look
in
this up.
2022. No, this is off the dome.
Okay.
I'm right. And as you'll hear, all of this has been done despite me telling him it was a really bad idea. So enjoy that part.
Yeah, it's going to be a good episode.
He's an elite level athlete, elite level runner, cyclist.
Crazy fast runner. I mean, I'm a slow runner, so anything's fast, but he is actually really, really fast.
Yeah, I mean, you see him running down the belt line. He's one of the guys that you see running down the belt line going, is that real?
Well, and you're also, or I don't know if other people think this, but I'm always like, how long can he hold that for? Like, how long can he hold
long
that pace
time.
for? And he's like, 24 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think I pulled up a chart to evaluate because I was ready for him to say that he wasn't running that much, but we knew from Strava that he was. But I pulled up a chart. I don't know if I told you that. It kind of like ranks like where your times are, like with 5Ks, 10Ks. His is between elite and world record, all of them.
That's amazing.
So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about running, riding, mountain
Business.
biking, and business culture. Return to office. One last I think thing that's important, especially since football season has started. And you didn't know this, but Jeff is a Gator. He also got his master's in medical science from Emory and his MBA from
All right,
Kennesaw
cut
State.
the podcast. We can't go any further. I'm not. If I had known he was a Gator this whole time, I would have stopped it before it began.
All right. Okay. Well, enjoy, Jeff. This is a really good one.
Yeah, we'll crush the Gators this year, anyways. Kind of good game against LSU last night. Go Noles.
Okay.
Jeff Richards, welcome to the Culture Edit.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
This seems so formal, but it's really not.
It's really not. We're on couches here in the studio, so this feels informal to me.
We try to.
Exactly. We try to make it comfortable for everyone.
We would offer you a drink, but it's a little early. We know you got more calls.
But they gave me a sandwich.
We
which
did,
is
yeah.
wonderful.
We gave you
Yeah.
a good cafe at shout out to Cafe at Far. It's kind of our go-to sandwich podcasting place.
Have you ever eaten there before?
No. So
Oh,
thanks.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
It was a good intro into a new option.
There's one in Midtown too. They do catering too.
Well, this
Okay.
Yeah.
is the one from West Midtown.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they do catering. It's pretty good.
And they
I
have
used to-
salads, so you can get the chicken salad instead of on a sandwich. You can just get it on a salad, which
Okay.
is good for
We could
lighter
order
days.
in at our new office at
Yeah.
999 Peachtree.
Exactly.
It's really good.
Yeah.
So what are you training for?
I'm actually training for the Atlanta Half Marathon this fall. So I've shifted, as you guys know, I've kind of moved from triathlon to cycling to running. Sometimes I go back to cycling. At the moment, I'm just running
Yeah.
and had a good Peachtree, so I was going to step up distance a little bit.
When is it?
It's in November. I think it's actually Thanksgiving Day. And then I was going to use the PNC 10 miler as a bit of a test.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like in October.
What's
So
the goal for the half marathon?
the goal for the half marathon is 6:15 pace, so it'd be like a 1:22. For me,
6:15 or 50?
6:15. 6:15.
Wow. That's really
Ouch.
that sounds fast.
Well, my PR was, years ago. I won't say when, but it was. I did the low 119s twice in the period of time when I was doing a ton of triathlon, mostly off road, but eventually Ironman.
What is
So,
that pace?
6 minutes,
6 flat.
Wow.
six flat. Yeah.
I was completely prepared for you to say, I'm not really training for anything. I went onto your Strava.
Chad was like,
I've
I'm gonna-
screenshotted your Strava. I was like, well, you're averaging 7 runs a week, 620 mile, 36 miles. I've got it all right here. I was ready to blast you with that. But
He's like, he's going to say he doesn't have enough time to train, and that's not true. I was like, yeah, but running takes a quarter of the time.
It does. That's why I switched to running. But you're catching me at a juncture in our company's history when I have some time, which is the first time in like 6 years.
So you're catching up.
I'm catching up.
Yeah. Does
Just
that mean
in the
you're going
water.
to start riding again?
I want to, but riding, as Nikki said, riding takes more time.
Yeah.
To have, when you've had results in the past, it's hard to do something that you used to do at a certain pace. That means not getting dropped from group rides in Atlanta, which are ferocious. Those are races.
Yeah.
And so I'm not ready to be shamed off Atlanta group rides because I can only commit to 6 or 7 hours a week.
Yeah.
So for
I
now,
was going to
running.
ask you that when you said results. So that means sticking on Tucker. That's a result.
Yeah, that's a result.
That is a result.
In this city, that is a result of
It's a
this.
Strava
In this
segment
community, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you feel. I was talking to Luke about this last night. So we were talking about that, how it's very difficult to not be able to train to your maximum potential because you just get destroyed on these rides, and then it becomes kind of like not fun because you're just constantly showing up and
it's
getting
not
curb stomped.
Yeah.
And then the really fit people are like, what are you talking about? What
Right.
do you mean you're not having fun? I'm having a blast. And I'm like, well, you're off the front.
Yeah. When are you going to start training properly and go off the front? That's the answer.
Yeah, it's tough. So of triathlon, running, and cycling, which is the one that you have, like when you are fit, that you have the most passion for?
Well, I don't know if I'd say there's one versus the other.
Okay. Maybe there isn't one.
I am a person that does periods of intense things for a period of time and then changes, and sometimes I go back to them. But triathlon was born out of the fact that I got injured in running when I was, in high school, college period, and I'm better at running than all three. That's because that was my background. But when I got into triathlon, the aspects of cycling is that it's social, and then I got into group rides, which everybody knows is like, that is the crack cocaine of riding, is being with the group, the social part of it, the competitive part of it, pace lining, occasionally, getting in, tearing off the front with a small group. There's nothing like that. Running is not like that. Swimming is not like that. It is the most fun, I would say, of the three. It's just cycling. I'm just better at running, and getting a result when you're time crunched, that's still fun too. So I guess I'd say that it is cycling. It's just the time commitment in this city to cycle at a high level so that it is fun is at least 10 hours a week, and I don't have that.
And that crack cocaine group ride that you're talking about, that I think that is kind of unique to Atlanta. Like it's not, I don't think it's as prevalent in other
Miami.
cities. Yeah, Miami, but they're not
It's different.
ferocious. Like they're not like
I mean, Don Pond.
Don Pond, yeah, but it is different here,
Yeah.
and there's I think more camaraderie built out of that because everyone rides basically like you said, races together every night.
Yeah, I don't. You guys are the ones who've traveled more, riding and group rides elsewhere. So
Yeah.
I only know Atlanta. It's pretty good.
It's special,
It is.
but I could see how being better at another sport would make me want to do it more.
Yes. I'm still waiting to find that sport that I'm just really, really good at.
Were you good at triathlons?
I was solid.
Yeah.
Because I would run people down. I was an okay swimmer. Swimming is very skilled. You need a coach really, because you'll waste all this energy. You can be really fit and burn a ton of energy and really not go fast at all. It can be embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I got good enough to get to a place where I could then, have a really solid bike, but not destroy my legs and then run people down. For me, the peak was in 2007. I was 6th in the world in the 35 to 39 age group in Xterra at the World Championships in Maui. And that was after doing that for like 8 years. So
That's pretty
that's
good.
as far as I
That's
got.
not
I
terrible.
mean, you weren't on the podium.
I was not
Top
on the
10.
podium.
Yeah.
And I was told that.
So would
by
you
others.
say that you're better at triathlons than Weesty?
We had a pretty intense back and forth. What's funny is he's better at the shorter stuff, but the longer it got, when we got to Ironman, I did better, but he eventually eclipsed me. But I was getting older, so I don't know.
Yeah.
There was a
You've
battle
got a
there.
few years on him.
Yes.
You got 10, probably 10 years.
It's a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. Of all the events, so you've done Ironman,
Yes,
the
twice.
Xterra Ironman.
Yep.
You've done Leadville.
Leadville on the bike. Yep.
You've done, what are like epic running races? Well, hold on the bike. You've done Georgia Games, Brooks
yeah.
Road Race,
Oh yeah, all the bike stuff in Atlanta.
Rome Road Race,
Yeah.
and then running. What are the big running races that you've done?
I ran in high school and I was going to run in college, ended up not doing that, but I haven't done a ton of huge individual running. I used triathlon to then jump into 10Ks here in Atlanta and do well and everything, but I didn't. I did those two half marathons after a full season of triathlon on just running 25 miles a week from triathlon. So I haven't done a bunch of big premier races. My two favorite races, different kinds of races. One was Leadville, the mountain bike race, which I did with Weesty.
Yeah.
And again, 8.5 hours of riding. So we got the buckle. We finished 4 minutes apart.
Yeah.
So he was ahead of me, but he was collapsing in the last hour and a half, and I was surging, and I almost caught him. Anyway, I see him at the finish. He's like falling down, and I'm like, full of energy because that's how we finish races differently. But anyway, that race was so much fun because you're racing with the pros, like all these big races, 2,000 people going up Columbine, and there's this conga line of riders going up to the top, steep, steep climbing, and then pros start coming down 50 miles an hour straight past the conga line within inches and screaming at you, get out of the way.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. That race, and then for triathlon, it was Escape from Alcatraz. That is another 2,000 person race. It's just iconic. You're jumping off the boat next to Alcatraz and then swimming into San Francisco and riding and running. Super cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So those would be the two like that stand out to you.
Just iconic. Yeah.
What's the hardest race you've ever done across all three
It's
sports?
certainly Ironman. It's just ridiculous. The distances, it's absurd. And the one I did better in was Coeur d'Alene in 2006. And at that time, which is funny because now the records keep getting blown away, but it was the hottest Ironman ever, which is crazy to think of now. We were finishing, and it was past 95. It was somewhere in the upper 90s and had the highest dropout rate of any race up to that point, which I think, that may become more standard now as things get hotter.
One thing we were talking about last night that we've had discussions with kind of other folks in business that also do this, that like do endurance sports or other types of athletics, is the amount of focus that you can have on work strategy while you're training. Do you find that like
100%? Oh, absolutely.
like
Yes.
do you do that on runs? Are you thinking about
yes.
work the whole time?
Yes, absolutely. And I think cycling, because you've got longer chunks of time and you have conversation. It's because in the early days of our company at SnapNurse, I was definitely having a ton of conversations throughout the peloton. Then it would become ferocious. There was no conversation. That's part of riding here. But those conversations then fed into, you might be thinking about something, then you're thinking about it while you're suffering, and then you think about it later. But now running, and always I think with endurance, there's that time relatively uninterrupted now. Yes, you can wear a watch where somebody could call you, and that has happened. I have had full-blown conversations while running, but you still get chunks of time, and for whatever happens to you physiologically with all the blood flow, that spurs creativity. You're solving a problem, or at least thinking about it, and then when you finish exercising, you have a fresh perspective a lot of times.
Yeah. It's like you can think about it until it gets really insane, and then the consciousness completely shrinks and you can't think about it, which I like that part too.
Sure.
Where like the only thing you can think about is the wheel in
Right.
front of you.
You're right.
Do you get that in running? Like, I guess if
You
you're
can
if
definitely
you're
get that
racing,
in running.
Okay. Yeah.
It's called a tempo run. The difference is you don't have because I don't have a group, because it's so hard, to find that in Atlanta, at least for me, with my schedule. And in cycling, you get the group experience, which is awesome while you're suffering and things narrow in. But when you're doing a tempo run, you definitely get that. All things are excluded. You're locked in. You're in pain that's tolerable, and it lasts for about half an hour.
How do you push yourself in the same? Because like with cycling, unless you are that person off the front inflicting pain on everyone, Brock and
Mason.
Michael, people are inflicting pain on you, and that's making you go harder and push harder than at least I could ever do on my own. So how do you push yourself to that point with running without having anyone else to push you?
I don't think you can, is the answer. I think you can still follow a plan, and just like you can with cycling individually, where you're focused on watts and heart rate or other metrics, you're going to focus on pace and cadence when you're running. There's no question that in a group of when you're running, which mostly my group is just Weesty. I just beat on Weesty when he's out of shape, and he does the same when I'm out of shape. But neither one, we don't have 10 people running like this, at least at these ages.
Could you find that in the city? Like if you
Probably.
like Atlanta Track
The
Club?
challenge is,
You're like the
even with the
Georgia
group
track.
rides, I have a window of time.
Yeah.
Even my schedule now is crazy. There's a window of time when it's available, and finding 10 people who can hold those paces at that particular period of time in the day is just not easy to do.
And sometimes it's easier to just like get out the door and ride or run whenever you can without having to coordinate.
Yeah.
Because we'll
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky that we have the two of us, so it's kind of a built-in training partner at all times. But sometimes we're like, oh God, we just don't feel like coordinating.
What would be awesome is if after this podcast that you get inbound individuals who say, yeah, I'm available to do that. And then you help me build a running crew.
Throwing
good
that out
point.
there. We could have the Speed Club running group.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like that.
Have you seen the Atlanta Run Club? Like, do you know this group? Like,
I've
they're-
seen it on Strava.
Yeah, they run like every Monday from the Nike. We had no idea really about them, but we see them running on the Beltline, but
Because there's like thousands of people
yeah,
running
we-
down the belt line.
Yeah, we saw their
Maybe not
Instagram. They have like
thousands, but
tons
hundreds.
and tons of
I
people.
didn't know it was that big,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth.
I knew
Yeah.
that.
It kind of goes
Yeah.
in waves because I haven't seen them recently, although maybe my schedule's not matching up with when they're running down the belt line. But there was a point where I was going to Solid Core over in Reynoldstown and driving back, it was at least 500 people
Wow.
running
Yeah.
Wow.
down. It was like the most people ever, other than a race, you
Yeah,
know?
that's huge.
It was insane. And their social media is amazing.
Okay. Well, I'll check that out.
Do you know how many times you have passed me on the Beltline and not even seen me while you're running?
Same.
Sometimes when you're running, you get locked in. Although there have been times where I did.
Do you remember? I don't even know. That one time I was walking with Hutch and I had the ball and I threw the ball at you
I don't remember that.
and it just went right by you and you just kept running and it actually hit the woman behind you. She was super pissed.
Yeah. That's on you.
Yeah.
Hit your target.
Yeah. And you're not even listening to music typically.
I
you're-
usually am listening to music.
Oh, you
I
are?
have AirPods in.
Okay.
But
Do you ever
maybe
just
that day.
jog, or are you just?
Oh, yeah.
Because every time I see you, now maybe our jogs are very different, but every time I see you, it feels like you're like when I see people. I have my brain does this
Mm-hmm.
weird thing where I attribute a sound to that person, and it's always like with you. I'm like it's a high pitched like whirling sound, like you're zooming past.
Wow.
Wow,
not
that's a
even
compliment.
kidding. Yeah, no, because I feel like you're like a gazelle just running, but gracefully, but so fast.
Well, thank you.
What do you listen to?
I'm a big Jack White fan, so I'll make
so
stations
rock.
out of yes.
All rock. That's all you listen to.
Pretty much.
No
yeah.
rap, no Cardi B.
Well, my kids listen to that, so sometimes it's I may come across one of their stations. We make stations on Apple Play that then all the music is of that. So she's got hip hop stations that definitely, I don't know what they're called, but yes, sometimes I do.
Or like techno?
I did when I was younger, not so much now.
So mainly just rock.
Mostly rock, yeah,
Oh, that's cool. We need to get some of those playlists.
for sure.
We have very different tastes. You listen to like not house music, but kind of weird.
I go all over the place.
Right.
Today I was listening to I made a playlist. I call it Class of 1993. So it's
Nice.
like Nirvana.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Oh, that's
all
great.
grunge, like heavy grunge, but like deep stuff, like Bleach. Like
Sure.
the real rough stuff. So that's what I was listening to today. How's the new house?
It's amazing.
When are you having the party?
Maybe this fall. Yeah,
Okay.
probably this fall. I'm in the middle.
You got furniture? Or you still sleeping on the floor?
It's no different. But I have somebody who's now working with me, and I have an architect, so we may go through a significant redesign, which might push everything out. But it'll turn the main floor into something wide open, which is what I really like. And then it goes into this amazing back porch that overlooks this huge yard, and the kids got their volleyball, softball set up back there. So
You like being in the Highlands
I love it.
versus
Yeah.
Midtown?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I've lived in Midtown the entire time I've been in Atlanta.
Yeah.
There was a brief period in Old Fourth Ward. That's true.
I don't remember that.
Yep. It was 2001.
Okay.
Otherwise, Midtown, which I love Midtown, but the Highlands, it's for where I am in life for family, it's just better.
That's a nice
You
life.
can't beat that.
No.
We went to Porch Fest this year. It was pretty awesome.
I know, I saw it,
Yeah.
and now we will be part of it.
Oh,
It was
can't
so
wait.
fun. It was
I saw
the best festival we've been to in Atlanta in at least a decade.
Yeah.
I just saw the bands set up. They were like full drum kits on a yard and like a bunch of aging dudes rocking out. And I'm like,
It was
this
so
is
fun.
awesome.
I've got an idea.
Yeah.
We get Warnicky to come back to
Yes.
Atlanta
I'm
with
down.
his band on your porch.
I mean, Please.
Calling him out right
That
now.
would be
I think
so fun.
That'd be really cool.
that would be fantastic.
How do you get to the office?
The sad truth is I do drive
You
1
do?
mile. A lot of times I have
run
to
Well, when it's
36
100
miles a week
When
and
it's
drive.
115 degrees out, it's just
Heat is a factor, but it's more often that something happens or someone needs to be taken to volleyball or softball, or I need to be somewhere and I work up until the very last second and then jump in the car and go drive and pick a kid up. It's more pragmatic. Yeah. Well, I could add in that I commuted by bike to Grady for 15 years every day, or I ran
I
occasionally.
remember seeing you commute every
I
day.
commuted on the Beltline before it was converted into paved. Even in the ice storm, I commuted in the ice storm.
I can relate to that.
Funny story that I don't think I've ever told you before. One time when you first started SnapNurse, you were still in Ponce City, or maybe it was like a year or two in.
The dark days.
It was like, yeah, it was clearly the
early
dark
days.
days when I saw this moment. I pull into Trader Joe's. It was in the morning, like to go get groceries, and you come like riding your bike through the Trader Joe's parking lot. But it looked like you had been dragged through hell and back before getting on this bike.
Oh, no.
The way like your head was just, and I almost stopped you to be like, hey, what's up? But you seemed like you were in such a dark moment.
She said you look too sad to
You
talk
looked too
to.
sad that I was like, you know what?
Jeez, what happened
I'm
that
gonna
day?
have to. I don't know.
Yeah. Personal
But I've
problems.
never told you that story. But it was so funny because I came home and told Chad, and I was like, maybe you should check in on him.
I was like, nah, it's fine.
He's fine. He's fine.
He'll be fine.
He's
Yeah.
probably just tired.
I don't know.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I mean, not really. I'm not laughing at your sadness.
Yeah. No, there was probably some sadness then.
And we'll come back to that.
But we'll come back to that.
I want to come back to that. But you mentioned Grady. Do you think back, like, what do you still look back on at Grady that you kind of miss? Because I was at Aaron's almost as long as you were at Grady, and I still think about like the good old days,
Sure.
like when we talked with John Trainer. What do you think about with Grady?
The thing I miss about Grady is the people that I worked with,
Yeah.
and the mission. You know, it's clearly, you know, it's a public health teaching, inner city. You're definitely helping those who have trouble with access to care. So it's a huge mission-driven experience, but it's also filled with a lot of bureaucracy and challenging processes. They had a turnaround CEO that came in there, John Halpert, and did an amazing job. I was there for a good chunk of time. He was there. And in some ways, that is part of the inspiration, or at least the training that brought me to a place of the impossible, turning around something. Grady almost went bankrupt in 2008 when I first got into a leadership role. We were 2 months away from payroll being a zero.
I remember that. The whole
Yeah.
city was worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pete Carell, everybody rallied, but it still was like the impossible lift to turn it all around. And then it became like the story it is still the story. It's the celebrated story of the country of a public health teaching inner city hospital that had all these broken processes, led by 2 CEOs, Mike Young, who came in, was like a turnaround specialist, but he was like 18 months, but he'd made massive changes, huge fraud issues and other stuff that he just addressed and wiped out. Then John Halpert came in, and I think is the kind of leader. At the time, I had never seen what I would call like an Oprah Winfrey style leader CEO who's talking to everybody all the time, talking about the challenges that we're going through, the culture of the facility, and not shying away from the parts that were broken. A very honest, open leader, but also pushing everybody there. So for me, as a person who's motivated, goal-oriented, it was a giant breath of fresh air. Even though the lift was enormous, I felt like we have a chance to actually, focus on goals and realize the mission.
Yeah. Do you think about John's leadership style when you're leading your own company now?
For sure. That informed me of a different way of leading. We did not have people like that at Grady. Not that, there wasn't the marquee place for leadership, at least for the first half of the time I was there. And he got a ton of recognition. So it's working all the angles. You can't ignore marketing. You got to be operationally astute. You got to have a lot of KPIs in place. You got to hold people accountable. All that stuff, which, for this audience, I'm sure is thinking, yeah, that's pretty much normal operating procedure. But it wasn't there, and it became standard. And so, yeah, for me, it was just a huge eye-opening educational experience for sure.
What do you think about when you think about your responsibility as a leader in an organization?
So I've had this conversation with he was our chief legal officer. He's moved into a chief revenue officer role. He worked for years at Dave & Buster's. And we've had this conversation, and he's said it to me, but I completely agree that culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. And that if you you can have a fantastic strategy, but if you've got a broken culture, it's not going to execute correctly anyway. Things aren't going to come to fruition. They're not going to meet KPIs. Yes, you can hold people accountable. You may be firing them instead of having coached them or elevated them. So I just think you have to have an open door policy. There's got to be a lot of empathy. You've got to hold people accountable, but hear them, meet them where they are. And we'll get to this eventually. This touches into the remote work and the whole balance of in office and out of office, which is now just an added dimension to that conversation. Otherwise, it's you need to be lifting up the people in your organization to get the best out of them, and they need to see you doing that. And when that's happening, there's a virtuous circle versus a vicious cycle of a top-down leader there's a more punitive aspect of it, and there's a disconnect between everyone from the front lines to the leadership at the top of the company.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a strategy around communicating about the culture and everything that's going on, or is it more of just a organic style of communicating for you?
I think it's both, but the strategy part of it is definitely, for us right now, it's the cadence with which we do town halls, utilizing online tools that let us communicate to the entire employee base every day. And so the challenge with the virtual workforce is using those tools and then being transparent about it, that everybody feels connected and working hard to do that. It has to be connected to a strategy because like everybody gets busy and, between calendars and, deadlines and pressure, if someone isn't holding us accountable to the communication, then it won't happen.
Definitely. We see that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're always surprised at how many really, really large enterprise level they're communicating, but there isn't much of a strategy around it. And I think now because of COVID and like you said, because of remote work, people are starting to think, okay, I have to hold the whole leadership team accountable. It's not even enough just for the CEO to communicate, they need to hear everyone at the leadership level communicating very specific things, whether it's around operations or culture, but we feel like we've seen a huge shift to being very strategic and intentional with communication compared to maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, our company's only 6 years old. We have more recently employed all those strategies. Yeah, our growth there was not a specific strategy in the absolute ballistic, hyper growth period, but we were all working so hard and communicating. It was more operationally driven. There's no question. That was just the volume of business coming at us. It is really this era, which for me, I feel like there's 3 eras of our company. There's the founding era, which was about 2 to 2.5 years, trying to, we had proof of concept in Atlanta, no question, with a marketplace, but we did not have the product market fit where you lock in and then it's like, I know what I'm doing now, I just have to scale. That happened when the pandemic hit, which wiped out what we were doing because the PRN business went to zero. And then rapid response nursing, utilizing the platform, became the product market fit, and it just became a scaling situation for 2 years. Now, post-pandemic, we're in a much more deliberate, intentional, strategic mindset, and that includes communication strategies. It's who we're hiring, how we're engaging the marketplace today. It's the third era, and it's just really getting started.
When you think about your employees, and this is a hypothetical question, and this is a question, this is kind of a signature question for us that we use a lot in our insights approach for clients when we want to understand what the culture is really like. Imagine a scenario where your employees are at a barbecue on the weekend. It's Labor Day weekend. They're at a barbecue. They meet a friend of a friend. So Jim Weesey introduces to his neighbor, and he asks you, what do you do? And you tell him what you do. You tell him about SnapNurse. And this is it from the employee's perspective. And they ask that employee, what's it like to work there? What do you want your people to say? What do you hope they say?
Well, I would hope they say that they're inspired to be there. But, for us, again, as a healthcare company and as a healthcare provider for first part of my career, it's the mission is what attracts people to this company. That's what attracts me to the company, and that's what I hope we're attracting when we're getting and new employees, is that they're attracted to the mission, and then the follow-on is that there's innovation, it's exciting, there's opportunities for growth, that the purpose of the company is to deliver on that mission, but for individual employees, there's opportunities to, one, that they don't feel disconnected from that they are part of that. Their work and their role in the company, they can see the direct effect of what they do delivering on that mission. So That might be a mouthful for someone to spit out at a barbecue, but I'd hope they say something like that.
How do you connect, especially, and we can talk about this even more, but with a workforce that is, like you said earlier before we started the podcast, your policy now is anyone can work from home without any
Yes.
repercussions. How do you connect individuals back to the mission, to that purpose, without having everyone together kind of, because as a group, it's definitely easier to facilitate that kind of connectedness feeling. How do you do that now that everyone's remote?
Yeah, so like I said, we use certain online tools, and one of them is Slack is the primary channel by which and we've created multiple channels so that the development team, because right, we're a hybrid, we've got a significant technology component, but of course they're developing features that then facilitate the delivery of nurses who then provide patient care. So they're also connected to the mission, as very much so. And during the pandemic, nurses shared so many heartbreaking stories, and then the recruiters would come back and share them with us, and they're very connected to the workforce that we deploy and put out to the facilities. I think part of it is, again, feeling confident that we've communicated what the mission is, and that's not nothing, is to get it digestible so that every person in the company knows the elevator pitch of what SnapNurse is, what it stands for, and what we do for our facilities and the clinicians that we deploy there.
Why did you decide to allow everyone to go fully remote if they wanted to? Because that speaks to the culture as well.
We moved into our headquarters in Atlanta in 2021, where we came out of being completely remote because of the virus. And we got a pretty large office space in Colony Square and filled it with 70, 80 workers. But then, of course, we're thinking, pandemic is over, but as everybody knows, there were just subsequent waves and waves, at least
Like
three more
when in
waves.
21? When 21?
It was March, April of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah.
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 So I guess that was like vaccine time, right?
Starting to get
Yes.
vaccines.
Yeah, it was
then.
starting the
Yes,
vaccine.
started
So
the
we
vaccine.
were deploying thousands of nurses in Florida and California to do a stadium style vaccines. Just hundreds in each location. But we thought we were going to use this call center. This was the old Uber customer service center, which felt like analogous. We're the Uber for nurses.
Like literally Uber?
It literally was Uber's space.
Okay.
That's amazing.
So we did fill it, and then with subsequent waves, we episodically had to go virtual for weeks sometimes. And with each wave, when it would subside, fewer people came back to the office, which I think is probably the story of every listener on your podcast is the longer and more frequent workers got the taste of working from home or the choice to do that, the harder it was to get them to come back to the office. And so 2 years later, we're now a remote first company, and we shrank our headquarters here in Atlanta. We'll do the same thing in Scottsdale, but we shrank our headquarters here by 60% and moved down the street and gave every worker the option to remote first if they want to. They can come in if they want to. But if that, from traffic to lifestyle to childcare or elder care, whatever it is, if that's working better for them and they're producing and engaged and happy with their work, then we want them to choose that first.
Are you seeing the same level of productivity?
Yeah, I would say more productive in
Really?
many ways. It's hard because other companies probably have a clearer before and after.
Yeah.
We had a tiny company that exploded, then went into an office, and then there was a brief period where we were all in the office, and then we went remote. I don't have a perfect analogy, comparison. I just know that the employees are very happy and very productive.
Let's transition to the entrepreneurial journey, because I know there's a lot of people that are listening that are entrepreneurs or that are thinking about being entrepreneurs, which is something that you went through pretty dramatically, I would say. And we haven't got on record that I told you SnapNurse was a bad idea. So you want to just go ahead and say that?
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. The elephant in the room. Chad Strickland said, "Don't do this."
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bad
Good
idea.
advice.
Good thing you didn't listen.
Yeah. Because you mentioned the darkest days, I'm people are always curious about that. I want to know, what's the dark day that you remember the most, and then what's the best day as a journey?
I would just say a couple things. One is I wanted to mention this because I had just read it, but Harvard Business Review said that now the average age, there's a giant range of people who become entrepreneurs, but the average age is actually 46. And I don't know if the audience knows that. Even I thought it was lower than that, so I was a little bit surprised.
Yeah.
But it totally fits with what happened to me. I mean, I don't know if that's for some people, that's their midlife crisis. I'm going to blow my life. I'm going to start a company, take a giant risk from a stable job.
I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, that's
Sure.
around the age. I think it's that you realize at that point in your life that your time is limited, and that you start to think about, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Right.
Yeah, that's
And,
probably a good way
and
to put
can
it.
I do more? Because I had a lot of people going, you could do so much more. And you probably did too.
Yeah.
I also think both of you were at a point where you were really successful in your own industry. And so I think people also get to that point where they've kind of hit this, not necessarily ceiling, but they have hit somewhat of a ceiling, especially from like a learning perspective. You're doing the same thing. You start to do the same thing all the time. It starts to become
Bored.
Yeah, you just get bored. And so then I think it's more of a midlife. I just want to keep learning. I just want to keep growing. And that comes in the form of starting something new.
It's true. That's the theme, is that you have learned enough in an industry that you've got a lot of really specific knowledge. If you can pair that up with a business plan and a great idea, that's the pathway that, of course, you may have naysayers, like actually on this podcast say, don't do that. However,
Yeah.
you should talk to lots of people around you in that journey. And I will tell your listeners, so what Chad did do, though, is give me, once I overrode the no, that was like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Well, then he gave me a series of books, and which was extremely valuable. So people can give you advice. They can give you money, which he didn't do either, and I asked for it.
Yeah.
But
Because I thought it was a bad idea.
but he did give me books for which he got no equity.
Yeah.
But it was extremely helpful. So one of them was called The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which is an amazing book. For any entrepreneur, you should basically just get Chad's recommended entrepreneur books, which there was like 10 of them.
Yeah. Maybe we'll put that list in the show notes.
You should do that.
Yeah.
0 to 1 was the other by Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
There was 10 total easily, and I just devoured them all, and they were critical. It's like changing your mind. Oh, I go to work every day. I do these things. I know a lot about this industry, versus I'm going to rethink how I do everything, and I'm going to go out and attack this problem. I'm going to go raise money. I'm going to take this huge risk, put together a business plan. Those books move you mentally to the place that you're going to take that risk. Then you're going to have a panic attack,
Yep.
maybe more than once. Then you're going to start the company. And in terms of the dark days, the early days, there's just so much uncertainty. Yes, you put together a plan and a pitch deck, and people heard you. They thought you sounded smart and you had a great idea, and they gave you their money. But going from pitch deck to idea to, revenue generating entity is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And as soon as I actually quit my job, we'd raised enough money. We were already trying to raise money again. So whatever you think you need to raise, you probably need to raise at least twice as much. Or you're on this treadmill of operating and raising constantly, which is what we did more or less for 2.5 years. That whole period was incredibly difficult. And I call them NDEs, that they were near-death experiences where the company almost went under, like the Grady story, where more than once we were within weeks of, it's just not going to work. And we're going to have to do this, that, or the other, cut all these people. And then
Maybe that's when Nikki saw you in the Trader Joe's.
It could be. I actually have a couple more stories too.
it could have been. I mean, I don't know. I only have my one experience. There were many times where I was telling my partners, you're all going to move in my basement. And they were like, I think he's actually serious. I'm like, I'm deadly serious. For whatever reason, although I've done this with other things, I was for sure, it was either going to work or I was going to die trying in the basement.
Yeah.
That kind of commitment is required. And then you're going to have hard periods. It just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the day or days that you think about where you're like, man, that was awesome. This is why I did this.
One was, we were in a very difficult spot. We needed capital, and we ended up selling a portion of our software to a company, and the revenue generated from it was transformational. It changed the company. It was non-dilutive capital, which was extremely important. So it was strategically the right thing to do. It wasn't a slam dunk, and so getting that to happen, I remember when it happened, and I remember holding up the check, and it was more than 7 figures, and dancing in the office at Pond City Market. And of course, those are all glass offices. So the other two two offices down were watching myself, my partner, but I was particularly animated, and they clearly just thought that we were going crazy or whatever, which we were, but with joy at the, getting something to happen that it was never a sure thing. And it had to happen to keep the company where it needed to be. What was interesting is that happened, and that was the fall of 2019. It was a critical time, the capital, the decision we made, the way it worked out. And then 4 months later, the pandemic hit. And that was like simultaneously the worst thing possible because our business went to zero. The PRN business did. But then we started getting orders, and it's like those old like .com commercials. Like, oh, somebody ordered 10 nurses. Like, oh my God, nobody's ever ordered 10. And then it was 20, then it was 50, then it was 100, then it was 1,000, and then it capped out at like 3,000 nurses in a single order, which that never happened in the history of staffing.
Like the screen started running off pixels.
It was comical. It's like it was a ticker tape.
Is this a glitch? Like what is?
It happened over months, but it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating, and it was exciting.
I mean, what you just said is kind of like what the future looks like for SnapNurse. What does the future look like for Jeff?
It's already started. As for the folks that know our company, my partner and I started the company. She was the CEO and I was the chief operating officer, and she left in the summer of 2022, and I was the CEO for about 10 months. And so we hired a marketplace CEO out of Silicon Valley who has experience in this in other industries, which is great. And a lot of the strategy, the cadence of communication, the remote first, it came from him because he'd done it before in another technology company that was a marketplace model and had great success with it. So I was thrilled and welcome, even though it was uncomfortable and a little bit awkward to have a title and a position and then move out of it. He is coming in as an operator, having done this for companies our size and larger, and my role has become almost entirely strategic. That handoff took months and months and months to do, and it is now part of the reason I'm able to exercise and run again, is that by being almost entirely strategic and less operations, it never ends because there's always the next thing and something's going wrong, and those jobs are just like that. That's the work I did for 20 years.
Yeah.
So to be strategic is the beginning of probably what's going to happen over the next several years and steering the company to this place that we, pursue the right direction to capture the next wave.
So more running, maybe some bike riding.
The bike riding would be awesome.
Maybe we'll get you on a big trip.
Yeah.
I see the trips. I want to do the trips.
You had some FOMO over
Oh, sure. I had some FOMO, but I also realized like that's so far away from the fitness that I have. Like 100 miles in steamboat on gravel.
Ryan Marshall did it with less than
he
500 miles under his
I saw
legs.
that.
That was impressive.
Was he smiling at the end, or was he
He was
cramping?
Oh, well, he did cramp.
He was smiling, but he went through a day,
Yeah.
for sure.
But
he loved
He
it.
loved
Awesome.
it. Yeah, he had
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
I have a couple more questions before we go because we do have some younger listeners who send us really nice notes saying that they love the little knowledge tidbits that they can take away from the podcast.
Okay.
So the one is for all the younger endurance athletes / business people out there, what is the one thing as an endurance athlete that has impacted you in the best way possible as a leader?
Business is an endurance event, without question, that requires like a clear head, a massive amount of persistence and hard work. And, endurance athletes, the peaks are racing, right? Which is usually, if you're lucky, it's every few months, so it's during a race season. It could be, on a weekly basis if you're a professional perhaps, but it's the work that happens before the event that defines what happens at the peak moments where you need to show up and get your job done and have a win. But that discipline that comes from endurance, it's a natural segue. I see that parallel and did from the time I started as an entrepreneur, that it is interesting. So you get into business and realize that all those things you were doing, if you start a business later in life, then they all wrap together. The personal and professional all became one giant thing that one informed the other. So, and I think endurance is just one dimension of that, but it's a huge one that I think it gives you an advantage. It is a competitive advantage in business to be an endurance athlete.
I 100%, we talk about this all the time. We agree. And I think it's really important what you just said for especially the younger people in their career, because there is a lot of, and I'm sure you see it with employees at work, the need for instant gratification and instant recognition. And if they don't get that, it's kind of, well, I'm done. I'm going to go find something else.
Right.
But it is those peaks and those valleys, and it's the hard work in the valleys that no one sees.
That's right.
That get you to the peak where everyone sees you up there, and, all
Right.
of that.
You're an overnight success. Well, actually, I've been working on this for 2 years. So.
Exactly. And then, I think my second question, if you could give your younger self just advice about life and business, what would you say?
I would say I would have just done it sooner. That's all. I stuck it out and some ways beat my head against the wall in a place where I couldn't get change to happen fast enough. And it took, which is a true endurance person's mentality, it took more pain than it should have for me to realize I can do this on my own and I should. And then the fear of doing it and the panic was replaced by, the thrill of getting out there and doing it. And so if that's something someone wants to do, if you're an endurance athlete at a high level, you've already distinguished yourself from a vast part of the population. So if you want to pair that with pursuing a path in business of starting your own business or being part of a new business, I would say do it sooner than later.
That's great advice.
We've been talking about having a bourbon tasting event.
Wonderful.
And you are the first one that came to mind on who could help us select the
Sure.
right. So that we might be back in touch with you on that.
Give me a budget, and I'll blow the entire budget and then some.
I told Nikki that's like your third passion.
I tried to.
It is.
The bourbon.
I actually tried to listen to a bourbon podcast this morning as well in the gym. I couldn't do it. I listened for like 15 minutes, and I'm sure to the bourbon lover, it's a great podcast. But I was like, all right, I'm trying.
It's another acquired taste, literally.
Well, Nikki's more of a Scotch girl.
I like
She's
Scotch.
Scotch.
I
like
love
Scotch.
Scotch.
I like
love
both.
Scotch. I like
Alright.
bourbon too, but I don't know what it is about Scotch though.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
It really, really
Yeah.
Thanks
has
for
been
having
awesome.
me.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it. And thanks for doing it on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah,
it
we
was a lot of
appreciate
fun
it.
We
before a holiday weekend.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, with that, we appreciate you
Signing
coming in.
off.
All right. Thank you both.